everyone. My name is Sebastian Fage. I'm the Vice President for Scalian in North America. Together with Agathe and Mark, it's our pleasure to host this webinar regarding industrial performance and supply chain new generation. First thing, let me introduce you to Mark and to Agathe. Agathe Vignol is the Executive Manager of Agilea in the US. She's a trainer and a consultant in supply chain performance and project management. And Mark Sexton is a senior consultant at Scalian. He has extensive experience in aviation industry, rail industry, and life sciences. His expertise are in industrial performance and operation excellence. We are going to be together for an hour roughly, and the presentation, and this hour has two parts. The first part is the presentation. It should last for 30 minutes roughly, and then we're gonna have a question and answer session. Yeah, I'm sure you're pretty familiar with the way it works. So during the first part, during the presentation, please feel free to type your comment, feel free to type your question in the chat, and we will take all your questions during the Q&A session. So here's the agenda. This is what we are going to talk about. We want to talk two parts. The first part is about measuring and assessing your current situation. And the second part is more about how to define a better future, and both on the short term and the medium term aspect of it. Before we jump to the first part, I'd like to take 1 second to explain to you the partnership that we have between Scalian and Agilea. So you understand there's two companies, but we've been working together for quite some time. And the reason we work together is that, first of all, we have common expertise, obviously, but also we complement each other very well. So typically, Agilea is a niche consulting company proposing training, consulting and technology support in supply chain and project management. So Agilea support the implementation of innovative solutions, globally speaking. Scalian proposition is to support customer reaching on-time delivery and on-quality delivery. So this involve expertise such as project management, quality assurance, supply chain management, operation excellence, including digital solution as well. Both companies are actually part of a common supply chain research laboratory that where we partner together with the Georgia Tech University and another university back in France as well. And again, this laboratory really focuses on supply chain innovation that we can propose to our customer as well. So with that in mind, Mark, if you're ready, you can go ahead and start the presentation.
Okay. Is my screen up?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to first cover the industrial maturity assessment. Let's get this here. Okay, so Scalian works with operation excellence. Our division is primarily operation excellence, really at the supplier or the customer, the client. And we cover all aspects from the request for information all the way into serial production. Our prime targets are on time and on quality delivery, so the logistics and everything that goes along with that. So today we're talking about the industrial maturity assessment, which can start as early as the project starts, but you can also start at any time. The earlier you start it, the more bang you get for your buck. But it covers all aspects of that. So it can be brought in as a preventative measure, which is great, or it can be brought in as a recovery measure, which is what often happens. And so what is it? What are we talking about? Well, there's a lot of tools out there, a lot of processes that have been implemented that create a mature process, that creates on-time delivery, creates on quality. And what the assessment is looking at a company to say, hey, do you have these things? Do you have them integrated, and are they working? So is it robust, repeatable, reliable? And does it have feedback coming from both your customers and your employees that are providing continuous improvement as a status or a culture in your system? So what we have is an industrial maturity assessment that is either the full assessment, which covers really the whole broad spectrum, or it can be tailored for specific suppliers that you have a concern with, that do they have the capacity, or do they have the maturity in their quality, are their tools accurate? What's the concern? And we can tailor that for whatever those concerns are. We really tailor them specifically. A company of 10,000 people is going to get a different assessment than a company of 10 people, but we've done them at both. So here's the assessment. It's 9 categories, covers the entire spectrum from are you documenting what you're doing in your process? Do you know your process, and do you have it well defined? Do you have the information you need to support your customers, and you have the parts and all the other things you need to support your customers? What we're going to be doing is we're going to look at all of these sections. We have up to 500 or so questions that we look at in these 9 areas. And we look for risk, we look for opportunities for improvement, and then we prioritize those based on what the needs of that particular company and our client are. And we put together a go forward strategy that says, here's what we recommend you do in the order we recommend you do it in. So we'll just quickly go over what those 9 areas are. The first one is industrial documentation. It's not really the documentation, but it's, do you have process flow maps or manufacturing mapping that shows you where your constraints are, where your yields are, your on time? So do you have a flow of your process, and do you understand your process sufficiently to assure that you're going to get parts out the other end? Your materials management is, do you have a system to order parts? Do you order them on time? And is it coordinated with your sales and your expectation? And is it coordinated with your manufacturing? Do you account for yields in your ordering process? Do you have first in, first out, that kind of thing? Industrial resource management is, do you have the tools and the people you need? Do you have a way to maintain those tools and people? Right? Do you have total preventative maintenance? Do you have gauge R&R? What do you have to make sure that your tools and your people, your resources are sufficient and they're capable? The tooling engineering is where you come in and say, hey, do we have a way to qualify the tool so that we know it's robust, we know it's accurate enough, we know that it will fit for use. The proactive preparedness, these are things like the failure mode effect analysis, both the define and the process failure mode effect analysis, to say, hey, do I look through my process? Do I look through my design to say, hey, where can mistakes happen? And can I avoid those mistakes before they happen rather than after they happen in corrective action? Purchasing control, that's your inventory management from your life cycle. So it takes into account even things like, do you have a process estimating how many obsolete parts do you have? Do you have long-term agreements with key suppliers that you need to have long-term agreements with to get these things going? And does it cover your full obligations that you have? Non-conforming management, this is pretty much the standard, but really in quality, the quality aspect of it, you've got to have 2 things. You've got to keep bad parts from good parts so they don't get mixed up. And the other thing is that when you have a bad part, do you have a process to learn from it? Do you have a feedback, a corrective action? What do you do to make sure that it doesn't happen again? Manufacturing and inspectability, this really looks at, do you have silos, or do you have cross-functional teams? And are those cross-functional teams able to get their feedback in? And then life cycle support. Not only do you have the parts you need and the service that you need for your commitments, but do you have the document? Are you keeping the documentation so that when a customer comes and says, "Hey, I have this issue," you know what version of the product it is, and you know what they need based on how it was produced and when it was produced. So we look at things like serialization and are you doing it properly, and are you accounting for the right documentation for your change management, so you can go back and do that. Excuse the pictures there. And that's what I have for the industrial maturity assessment. So I'm going to turn it over. You got a question there, Sebastian?
No, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for making it pretty synthetic. But obviously, when we do the assessment of an organization, skills are also very important. You want to make sure that the right person are at the right place, of course. And this is what Agathe is going to address right now.
Sure. Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, Mark. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So as said, Mark, when you are looking at the maturity of your supply chain, you need to know if your teams are robust enough to support also your maturity and your supply chain performance. So how we combine the Scalian knowledge and the one of Agilea is thanks to our skills analysis program. So Agilea is part of the APIX or ASCM association. We are also part of multiple supply chain certification program, has Demand-Driven Institute as well, and other institute. And we developed a complete skills assessment of your teams to allow you to get the complete overview of what are the skills level of your teams, and are your teams enough robust to support then your supply chain strategy. So how we manage this, we have developed a learning management system platform where we have some multiple quiz, multiple questionnaire. And then we have a second step, which is an interview between the instructor, so the Agilea instructor, and each member of your teams, where we are proposing multiple situation, multiple use case to then validate their know-how. Because most of the time, and what we can see in supply chain management, is that so many people have, I would say, the right know-how, but they are just missing some theoretical background, some basics background. So that's why we are assessing this. And then what the target of the skills assessment is to link also the training program for your teams, the skills improvement of your teams, I would say, the skills transformation of your teams, linked to your supply chain strategy. How to link your improvement, the improvement of your S&OP process with the skills of your team. How to improve the procurement process thanks to the skills also of your team. So this is something that we are creating, and then we propose at the end, for example, supply chain academy or things like this. How it works, so this is digital platform where you have multiple quiz questionnaires. So for example, here we can see the demand supply chain managers quiz, S&OP manager, supply chain specialist, and so on. Then you have, each member have his own individual results. And then you can also manage all the skills management of your team and the skills improvement of your team. And so thanks to this, you link the industrial assessment of Scalian with the skills assessment to then propose the complete improvement program for your supply chain, I would say, to then be sure to ensure your strategy thanks to the process and also the knowledge management of your teams. So this is a kind of result you could have. Thanks to this, you have a complete report, the training program. And I would say, so when you link the industrial assessment and the skills assessment, you know what will be, for example, the 6 months, 1 year program. And I would say the program and plan for you to be sure and to prepare your next generation supply chain. So this is good for me and for the Aziz. Maybe Sébastien, do you have something to add?
No, I mean, thank you, Agathe. So that was really the first part of the presentation where we talk about how Scalian and Agilea together, we can help you to really understand what is your current situation, what are your strengths, what are your potential opportunity for improvement. So now we're going to go to the second part of this presentation where we are talking about implementing improvement. First part, Mark is going to talk about the implementation of quick wins, and then we'll talk about more the medium-term actions that we can propose, and Agathe will talk about that. So Mark, if you want to go ahead.
Okay. Okay, you got my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so when we're done with the assessment, which is fairly quick, we come up within these 9 different areas, kind of a summary of what the maturity level of the company we're looking at is in all 9 levels. Are they level 1 mature, which is they may or may not have heard of it, or are they level 5 mature where they're world class and they really don't have much improvement left to go on there. And then we'll put an overall assessment for the company, and then an assessment for the 9 areas, and then each area, of course, where there's some observations and findings and recommendations for improvement, we'll put those in the report too. Now, why I'm talking about quick wins is that when you do one of these assessments or any improvement activity like this, you need to get buy-in. Change always requires buy-in. And the way you get that buy-in is you show effectiveness, right? If I come in and I say, hey, you do all of these things, and 2 years from now, you're going to have a great process, and people got to wait 2 years to see it. They just don't buy into it. So you want to reinforce that culture of continuous improvement by having visible improvements that are there right away. So you want these wins that you can implement in 30 days or less, and that they have immediate detectable impact to both the management and the people working the floor. Okay, so that's why we'll do a prioritization of the action items, but we'll suggest a lot of things that can be done right away. Okay, so one way we look at this, and when we put the assessment, everything is cause and effect is mentality we work at, and we have a little more complete cause and effect diagram than you'll see most of the places, where we put in this leadership, culture, customer service, and most importantly, the logistics, which is really the backbone of your cause and effect of creating your process. So your supply chain, there. So most of you've seen the other 6 are pretty much standard in the fishbone. But when you look at this, the reason I lay it out like this is when we look at it, as you go back through this fishbone, the further back you go, the longer it takes to see results, but the more leverage those results usually have. So it takes longer, might cost more, but it then has a total larger impact. And so here's a quick one that ties in with what Agat's saying there is people do something like, well, I've trained the operator. Well, you train the operator, it's fairly low cost, but it also fades fairly quick. Right, the benefit is over fairly soon. Whereas if I put in a complete training program with the certifications and the whole quality, that's going to take a little more time, cost a little more, but it's going to have a much larger effect and much larger return on investment over time, right? Just like, so that's an example as I go up in my, because we have different tools that go along and lay along each one of these lines all the way back. There's well over 50 tools that we lay against this cause and effect diagram. So take an example back here of like laying out the factory so that it's lean, which means that you do a spaghetti diagram and you operate so everything feeds into everything else. And you have quick visibility of this is what I work on next, and this is what I just worked on, and this is where it goes. So I'm putting a lean factory layout. Well, that's going to take some time, going to cost some money, but you're going to have an impact for a long time that goes with it. So that's why we lay it out like this. There's a couple of real key ones that we'll do is that we do that's a little different is when we do the PFMEA, which is the Process Failure Mode Spec Analysis tool, we also put mistake proofing training in there, which is, how to color code, or is it obvious that it's right, or does the inspector or operator really have to question whether it's right? What types of skills go in? Is it easier to do it right, or is it easier to do it wrong? Which is the easiest? So we have these mistake proofing tools. We have 10 general rules for design and 10 general rules for processes. But we teach people those mistake proofing, so when we go witness the process, they know that, oh, there's something that's wrong, because it's not mistake proof, meaning it's liable to have problems in the future. So adding that training in with the PFMEA really helps the effectiveness and why our PFMEAs are effective. So in this, I want to say that with this assessment, we're going to identify the strengths and the weaknesses, because the strengths you want to capitalize on, and often we're going into suppliers and the buyer or the customer wants to know, hey, are these guys going to have the capacity? Are they going to have the capability? Are they going to be on time? Are they going to be on quality? But we also got to say, hey, these are some of the risks you're going to take with these. We put the actions in short and long term, and try to prioritize those. We can also get involved with following up if necessary, or we can turn it over to the client and say, here's the action plan that we recommend, go at it. Either way, we'll follow through on project management, manage it, or we'll just turn it over. And that cause and effect and the way it's laid out in the thing, it lets us know, hey, these are quick wins, low cost. These are long-term. Like a DFMEA, you're not going to see benefits for a couple of years, but you're going to see a lot of benefits if you do it right. So those are things that we put. So that's what I wanted to cover there. So I'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, indeed. Back over to Agathe for the last part. Agathe, can you tell us a little bit about how modeling and how simulation can be used in order to take educated and smart decision when it comes to reshape the supply chain?
Sure. Actually, to support also, for example, any analysis you've done, we are using different type of tools then to prepare your future, so as process mining, simulation, and also digital visualization or virtual implementation. Why? So the target is to use all your data. So I will say after all the process analysis, you can also use all the data you have in your ERP system, in your IT system, to identify, so where are the real bottlenecks, where are the non-value added time, and then to create also the real flow ratio of your supply chain. And also, so the target of this is to create the digital plant and to get the simulation for the next 4 or 5 years in terms of return on investment, ROI, resources use, and also working capital investment. So first one, for example, so the modeling, we use the data from your ERP system, from your system, to understand what are the real process, what are also the real loop here. So we can see, for example, so our bottleneck seems to be around these two workshops. And then, so thanks to this analysis that we are doing in 6 months, 12 months, analysis of the work order, but also we can do this, for example, on the PO. We can get the full visibility of the key business of the process, where are the bottleneck, and then so identify the real constraint, and also the opportunities that you could have in your supply chain. We are looking at, so what we know is that, so if we are creating flow in your supply chain, we are creating value in the supply chain. So this is really the target of this tool. So identify the root cause and the issue, the opportunities, and align also all your performance indicators, your KPIs, with the strategy of your company. How it looks. So for example, we have one of the tools which calls Agilea flow analysis. So here, for example, we are getting so your work orders data, the part numbers, just the different activities, timings, and then also the customer and suppliers. And thanks to this, we are analyzing. So here, for example, this is a really huge industrial flow. We can make some zoom and identify, so we can see in bold where are the bottleneck, and identify, so what are the different time duration, where, for example, so maybe this one was a mistake done, I don't know, in this workshop, and really identify the real performance of your supply chain. Thanks to this, so we can make this analysis in terms of process, in terms of timing, in terms also of turnover, so in terms of cash, quantity. And then, so thanks to this, you have the complete view within, so 1 day or 2 days of the data of your system, of the past data of your system. And so thanks to this also, you can then define multiple scenarios to then, I would say, define your next generation supply chain. How to do this? So here, so this is so the global view, but how to do this then? So the second step is a simulation. So you had the view of where are your bottleneck, where is your supply chain performance, how is managed your supply chain, and thanks to this, you should have different or multiple scenario. Where is your, so what do you want as I would say benefits in your supply chain? What are the multiple scenario in terms of performance? And thanks to this, so you will define this scenario, and we will integrate this scenario in our tools. So here you can see, so we are using one tool called Witness. And thanks to this, so we are defining your to-be implementations, your to-be supply chain, and we are creating so the simulation of your supply chain in 4 years. In terms of, so you will have the view of the lead time, you will have the simulation on the performance, so on-time delivery. You will have the view also in terms of investment, so working capital, and also in terms of return on investment. So thanks to how we are doing, so there is something really fancy we can heard today, so supply chain newspaper and so on. So we are creating the digital twin. So what do we mean? So we are creating the PN, the digital PN, so part number. And then, so we are in terms of, so timing, lead time, routing number, and so on, batch size, and also in terms of financial statements. So the price also, so we have multiple scenarios to define the multiple price. And then, so thanks to this, we could have the modelization, so the modeling and the simulation of your to-be supply chain. So this is also what is behind, so the digital twin. We are creating the digital PN of your product portfolio. And thanks to this, you will have the output in terms of lead time management, in terms of WIP, so work in process, in terms also of maintenance, so the OEE, and also in terms of multiple costs. And so how then you could have this simulation. We have this, you can see here, so this is a financial simulation. And then so thanks to this, you have the multiple scenario. So here you can see we have the I would say worst case scenario and the best case scenario. We have inside each scenario so the different data you wanted to simulate, and also the different data, for example, do we keep this supplier? Do we change the supplier? Are we looking, for example, for, I would say, for right supplier or local supplier? Are we, for example, investing in new machine or not? So all these scenarios are inside the machine. And thanks to this, so you have all these scenarios that we propose to you. And then, so thanks to this, you have, I will say, the forecasted value for the next 3 years in terms of results, so financial results, in terms of inventory. So for example, here we can see that this is a curve of the WIP value. And we have also the same view, for example, in terms of OTD. So if you say that, okay, my OTD, we can't achieve a 100 OTD, 100% OTD, we will say, so, okay, let's focus in 90% OTDs, and thanks to this, we will integrate this value in the scenario. And then, so this will be also something integrated in one of these scenario here. So it's how we can use then all the analysis we've done in the industrial assessment. Also, thanks also to the modeling, we identify where are the bottleneck. And thanks to all this data, we define the to-be, also integrating your strategy, your business plan for the next years. And thanks to this, you have the view of where should be the performance in terms of finance and also delivery performance. And we will say that what are the main return of experience we have from this kind of project is that so most of the projects we've done are accurate by minus or plus 5%. So what we say is that so when you are selecting one of the scenario, most of the project we have done, the after 3 years, we can see that the real results of your supply chain performance is the one we have predicted in the simulation, so 3 years before. So we've done this for a distribution center. We've done this for aerospace company. We've done also this for a pharmaceutical company. I would say so there is no constraint in terms of environment. What are the main constraints are the availability of the data. And all you know that to keep and to get all the data, it's really complicated in all our supply chain. So this is good for me. Maybe Sebastian, so I'll give you the lead.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark and Agathe. Everybody, please feel free to ask any question regarding the presentation that we've done, or any comment that you have. We'll be very happy. But before we take the question from the audience, I've got a couple of questions for you guys, maybe. So Agathe, we were talking about the simulation project, so let's stay on this topic for a while. Mm-hmm. Can you give us an idea of how long a simulation project is?
Yeah, so actually, as I told you, so what is the main constraint we have in this kind of project is the availability of the data. As soon as we have so all the data, so we have already, as we have done more than 20 projects like this, and I will say so with multiple manufacturing site and also sole manufacturing site. But if we take the example, so we have one manufacturing site, which is doing more than, I would say, so 500 parts. Then so to get all the data, it took more than, I would say, 3 weeks, 1 month to get the data. And then also to make then so all the simulation, I will say so it takes us between 1 and 2 weeks, but one complete simulation project is less than 2 months. But it really depends So, and this is, I would say, so something that we have in all the projects, the involvement of the team and the availability of the IT team. Most of the time, we can see that IT teams are really the constraint of this kind of project. And so we have to wait to get the right data, then to propose the right simulation.
Okay, all right. So that's great. So you're saying, assuming you got access to the data, within 2 months, you can help
Sure.
a manager to see into his future, to tell him this is the decision, based on the decision you're going to take right now, this is what the result you're going to get in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So it's
yes, and with multiple scenario. So what does it mean is that yes, so you will have, so at the end, so for example, in the last project we've done, so you have more than 10, so you have 10 multiple scenario, and so you are selecting the option, and thanks to all this option, you can then define so where you want to go regarding also the strategy and your objective as supply chain manager or operational manager.
Absolutely, that's great. That's great. Mark, I believe I got a couple of questions for you here as well, because they're regarding the industrial assessment. The first one is, how long does it take? So how long does an industrial assessment take?
Yeah, well, not very long. So a medium-sized company would take 2 assessors 2 days. A small company might take 1 assessor 1 day on site, and then another half day or day of follow up with the actions. So that it all depends also on how thorough the client wants the assessment to be.
Okay, so how thorough, actually, that's maybe a transition to the other question, because the other question I have for you is how flexible the assessment can be. In other words, if I want to do an assessment, do I have to do the 9 chapters that we present or not?
No. Well, you'll do parts of most of them depending on what your concern is. So if your concern is only you have a supplier that they have everything except for they got bad quality, then we're going to tailor it and focus on the quality thing. So we're gonna take out a lot of actions that only have to do with on-time delivery or logistics. If and in the other case it's on-time delivery issue, we'll look at it a different way and take out a lot of the quality concerns and really look at, do their logistics tie together. But if it's a new supplier that you want to do a quick, should we go with this supplier or not go with this supplier? Then there are tailor it towards that. So
okay, yeah. Speaking about this assessment here, we got a question from RJ. Is asking how similar the assessment is to the Airbus IPCA plus. So that means that, first of all, he knows the IPCA plus from Airbus. So, but how similar or how different the industrial assessment that you presented, Mark, is compared to the Airbus IPCA?
It covers all of the same things with the addition of the customer support is an addition. The order of things are a little bit different because we're focusing more on the integration of the tools rather than just, do you have the tools? Both of them, you're walking the floor. I've done the IPCA for Airbus. There's a lot of similarity. They covered the same thing. If you do well on one, you're going to do well on the other.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. This is another question, and the question might be for you, Agathe. Raphael says, hello, I was wondering, usually when you are evaluating potential to-be scenarios for companies, how many different scenarios are you assessing?
So actually, I would say we have more than 50 scenarios inside by Agilea with the team. And we are proposing just, I would say, around 10 scenarios and linked to the strategy that we shared, that the customer shared with us. So we have, I would say, plenty of scenarios. And then, so thanks to our background and our knowledge, we are just proposing between 5 and 10 scenarios.
Okay. Okay. Want to stay with you a little bit for the next question as well. Agathe, is can you tell us about the deliverables of a skill assessment? So you do the skill assessment, and what do you get out of that?
Mm-hmm. So after so what are the deliverables of the skills assessment? You're gonna have individual skills report, so a skills assessment. We're gonna do also one team report. So this is mainly for the manager. We link the skills and the targeted skills of your teams, and you're gonna have the level of what is actually the skills level. What are also the different appetite of your team member? So do they want to learn more in this or not? And then thanks to this, we'll link this to the strategy, so your own strategy. For example, you are looking for supplier management activities. We can say that, okay, some of the team member have the right skills or need to improve their background, but just 2 of them, for example, have the leadership to manage, for example, a supplier. So this is mainly what you're gonna have. So the review, the skills review, the skills analysis, and then after that, we are proposing also one transformation plan. So what are the training plan for each of the team member, depending also of their need and also the need of your team.
Great. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. There's another question, and I believe it's going to be for you again, Agathe. This is the question in the scenarios that we already talked about. How do you take into account unattended events such as the current pandemic?
Exactly. So inside each scenario, we have we included a risk assessment. So we have multiple risks taking into account the scenarios. For example, so we updated some of the scenarios. So when we had now we have the project, ongoing project. So we are taking into account this scenario also depending the environment where you worked. I would say, so we are working, for example, for aerospace company. So we are taking into account the impact. And so what are the forecasted impact of the aerospace? So for example, we know that we have visibility for 2, 3, 4, 5 years with multiple scenario. We are taking into account all this type of scenario. I would say the pessimistic and the optimistic one. And thanks to this, we are saying, okay, we have the optimistic one, the pessimistic one, and then we propose I will say the multiple scenario on this view.
Okay.
So just my email address is not the right one, Sebastian, but that's.
I see that. Yeah, we're gonna we'll need to correct it. I don't know if there. I mean, there's still some time for the question. If you've got other question, there's another one here regarding the industrial assessment, and it's about. Give us an example, Mark. I think that's for you. Give us an example, Mark, please, of our review of industrial documentation can result in 2 quick wins.
Okay, so your industrial documentation is really your manufacturing flow. Do you have your manufacturing flow, and do you have the right data on it? So in one assessment I was doing, I looked at it, and the first thing they had was the capacity that they listed was the capacity of the equipment running full time and not using equipment availability. So then you look at it and say, hold it, what is really the equipment availability? And then you find your bottleneck, right? So you find the bottleneck, and just before that bottleneck in this example, there was a process that had a lot of capacity, but it had a very low yield. So what happens is when that yield drops down, then all of a sudden your bottleneck is empty. And so you're not using your bottleneck process, and that reduces the amount of parts you can produce, period. So just looking at it and seeing it quickly with the industrial documentation, you just put in some strategic WIP after the low yield process with high capacity, so that you guarantee that your bottleneck process is working at 100% of the time. And that's something you'll see quickly in the assessment.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. There's no more questions, so I think it's time to conclude this presentation. Thank you, Agathe, and thank you, Mark, and thank you everybody for attending the this hour presentation. I hope it was interesting. I hope you learn a few interesting things about how Agilea and Scalian can help your operation. If you want to know us a bit more, you can check the website for Agilea and Scalian. You got on the chat here the correct email address for Agathe, so that's the second one. You got our phone number as well, and you got as well Mark and mine details. Thank you very much again, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.